very, very good job over the last couple of years, as has the board from a standpoint of doing our best to be as frugal as we can, because of the expenditure side of that general fund. We didn't replace a lot of positions, some of it due to enrollment, but some of it due to cutting back and increasing class sizes in certain areas and things that happened along the way to save some money. And fortunately for us, we accomplished that before my time. You accomplished that, and Rose and the administration accomplished that. And it was very fortunate for us that it happened, because we lived on it, not getting the money from the state. That $4.3 million has allowed us not to have to go borrow to make payroll and do things, because if we're going to be very close to needing to do that in February. And if we had no fund balance, we would have been into that scenario. So it's one of the reasons that it's prudent to have a fund balance. Obviously, we don't want to overtax, and we don't want to have the fund balance grow at a dramatic level on an ongoing basis. But this was a year of having that 8 to 12% fund balance number was a very prudent thing to do. And not knowing where we're getting money, we're going to get money released to us that Rose is going to report on, but we still don't know what the total at the end of the year is going to be, because they haven't agreed to it yet. And we in the next meeting have to give a resolution of what we're going to do from a taxation standpoint for the 2016-17 school year, and we don't even know what we're getting in 15-16, let alone 16-17. So, but I just want to say hats off to you as a board and the administration and staff for tightening as much as we possibly could have tightened to get ourselves into a financial position, and obviously with Rose's expertise and the job that her and her staff had done. I just think it was a really, really strong financial year, and I want to applaud everybody who put it in place. Again, before me coming here, this is June 30th, so hats off to doing what you had to do to get yourself into the financial condition that we are in again now.
Joe, is there any word of how much or Rose?
Yeah, do you want me to do
Yeah, please do it now. Sure.
We are supposed to get a deposit tomorrow on the 5th of January from the state, and it's going to be for $5.1 million. So what they're doing is they're taking our budgets from, our funding levels from 14-15 and funding the first, basically the 6 months of what we would have gotten if we were level funded from last year. So we're getting Social Security reimbursement, which they pay us back half on what we pay out in our payroll. Basic ed funding, we're getting about $1.2 million in basic ed funding. Our total for the year will be 4.7, 4.8, looking at last year's numbers. Transportation, which transportation is always a year behind, so they're starting to pay us out on the 14-15 year of transportation. They owed us a little from 13-14, which they didn't pay us at June 30th of last year, so they paid that out. They paid their half of the retirement for the first 2 quarters of this year, and the Ready to Learn block grant, which is a funding source we use to support our full-day kindergarten program. It's one of the very few of the grants that come from the state that that were able to be used to supplant current programs. So we already had a full-day kindergarten program, but they do allow us to take that money and use it towards that program. And that actually increased to $238,000. It was $192 last year. But one of the notes that we got, one of the emails that we got today regarding the funding, just read the statement at the end. These are the formulas they use. It says, do not expect these formulas to be sustained. There still could be changes down the road as far as what they actually give us in the different categories, the Ready to Learn grant, the basic ed funding, the special ed funding. All those things could still change before the end of the year. But they used last year's to kind of calculate and give us something. So we are scheduled to get a payment of $1.5 million, or $5.1 million, sorry,
You're saying that was
tomorrow.
Like half of the year?
That's just on the state side. We also got a notification from the federal at the end of today for Title I and Title II which
Right,
is
that's-
additional $455.
$455,000 for the year, but they have not paid us any of that yet. I haven't seen anything listed yet of getting paid on that, but that should, they said they weren't gonna hold the federal, that's gonna start flowing through, but I didn't see anything on our, you can go online and we can look and see what's pending, to be deposited for us, and I didn't see anything on federal yet. This is what I've seen, so far. And things are paid out in quarters, so I'm saying 6 months, but they pay quarterly, so it's not that I would
And I know where
get
you're
6
going.
months
We-
worth,
We
yeah.
get more than 10.2 million, where's the rest of it done?
Yeah.
We have a really big debt service payment on,
Oh, okay.
March 1st.
March 1st.
Mhm.
And our PlaneCon reimbursement on that makes that quarter a much higher number than we get generally than we do on an ongoing basis, because we pay the interest in October, and we pay the big principal and debt payment on March 1st.
Right, and the retirement share that they pay too is also, that's paid back quarterly, but it's also 6 months behind. So it's, we're filling out quarterly reports, like December, I filled out my quarterly report, but it was for, the December one, I think was April to June, I think, yeah. So it lags, so it's what we paid out at the end of last year in salaries and benefits, they're reimbursing us that.
And we certainly expect not to have it cut, but we don't really have any idea what it's going to be. I mean, the original thought was, with the governor's budget, it was gonna be $350 million, of which 100 immediately went to the city of Philadelphia, and then 250 went to basic ed for everybody else, and then the extra 50 million in special ed was dispersed based on the formula. And nobody can agree on the formula, nor could they agree on the amount of money. So, our expectation is we're gonna get more. We just don't think it's gonna be the original 380,000 that we were expecting, that we were told back in June to expect. That's gonna be the best case, but I think the worst case is we know we're gonna get slightly more than what we got in 14-15, but we don't know how much, and we don't know, quite honestly, when. And we're gonna be right into the budget cycle of 16-17, starting next Monday night. We have to make a resolution. Are we gonna live within the index that they're allowing us to raise taxes? And we're not saying we're going to, but we're saying, and we'll get to that here very shortly, that we're gonna live within the index, because financially we got ourselves back to where to a reasonable financial position, and we don't anticipate, especially because of our enrollment going down, that we're gonna have to go beyond the index. Now, some districts are taking the opposite approach, saying, look, you didn't tell us what we're gonna get this year, we have no idea, and we have no idea what we're gonna get next year, so we can't tell you that we're gonna live within the index. But our current situation, with the expenditure savings that we've had and the budgeting position that we're currently in, and the significant tax increase that we had, we expect to be able to live within that index and enrollment going down. So, but that was good. The good news is we were literally a whisker away from saying, okay, we have to literally put loan documents in place so that we can make payroll and make the debt service payment in February and March. This alleviates our ongoing biweekly payrolls about 740.
740.
So every 2 weeks we're spending $1.6 million, and this buys us additional time, and then hopefully we get the additional monies that are due to us for the rest of the fiscal year, which hopefully will be about another $7 million in total.
Less than 2 months.
Correct. The good news is, we had a fund balance, we're able to do it without borrowing. There are other districts close by that have had to go borrow, and it's completely unfair to them for what's happened. But fortunately, we weren't in a position where we had to do that. We were getting close, and that's why in December, we did the resolution to give me the authority to start the process. And now that we've got this, we can hold off on that process. But there's.
From what I understand, this is back, but I think each month now we should still get our payments,
We're
portion of
We're
what we should
expecting
get
that that's
on a
what
monthly
they've
basis.
agreed to, but
But that could change.
that could change. That could change.
Tentative budget's due the end of March, right? For next year.
Yeah. Well, again, we have to tell the state that we're gonna live within the index on Monday night, this coming Monday night. For next year, 16-17, we don't even know what we're getting from them for this current year, 6 months late, 6.5 months late.
And they didn't specify about the formula,
Nope.
so we're gonna assume that they're keeping status quo and not going with
That
the
basic.
bipartisan commission that was assembled to go ahead and allocate dollars in a different way.
You're right.
So
There was a-
we-
there- that- there was
there's
that-
been no communication from the state whatsoever when it comes to that.
No. Now, that
Because
coalition,
that's a big thing, yeah.
still has come out and said, this is what we think it should be, but the legislature hasn't agreed
Yeah, but I
to
think
it.
it's just quite contradictory that you're going to release funding, but you're not telling us the formula in which you're going to use. Because I mean, everyone was, all gung ho for this, this committee, and obviously, I think it's imperative for all 501 school districts to realize what kind of formula dollars are actually being distributed.
But
And what-
that's
and really
another
what
piece of
the- what the-
legislation, that's after the budget's passed, then they have to pass the legislation, which would include the formula,
Yeah.
which they didn't
And
get
so
that
so
far
really
yet.
what they've done is they looked backwards, used the rear view mirror to 2014-15, and said, well, this is what you would have received under that scenario. And so this is what we're gonna give you until we work it out.
That's the only choice they had,
That's it.
because they couldn't come up with an agreement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's still ludicrous that we don't have any idea what it's gonna be. And it's not, it hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse from a political standpoint and between the House, the Senate, and the government. It's, and once they do agree on what the formula is going to be and what the spending is gonna be, then they have to put together, how are we gonna raise the money to pay for it? And that's not part of any of the legislation
Yeah,
yet
they don't
either.
have an idea how.
Yeah, I mean, there's proposals out there that you were gonna go to a 7.5% sales tax and expand the base. Well, that failed, and then it was just expand the base to including all services and food and clothing, and
That
that
was
didn't,
natural
and that,
gas, which they
Yeah,
talked
and that-
about
and that-
early on,
yep,
that
and
was
it-
gonna pay for education,
Yep.
and they went against
yeah,
that.
and the gambling, I mean, we all remember the gambling revenue from 2 governors ago was
Right.
gonna be allocated for education, and it was, and then it was taken away. Now
Act
it's
One was
zero.
on the news tonight, that Act One that might be getting money to Luzerne County for the police force for the new mayor, to Wilkes-Barre and that.
Right, and now all of that
So they're
money.
still taking the money away from Act One and giving it elsewhere, when it was
was-
supposedly to be for public
It was
education.
specifically oriented for 100% of
And
that
to
for money
reduce
to go
taxes
to
when it
reduce
has-
property taxes for
And
school
that's out the
districts.
door too,
Yep, Correct.
the property tax reduction.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
quite different.
Yeah, it's, and here we are required to tell everybody Monday, January 11th, that we're gonna live within the index.
You keep saying that.
Well, the only reason why I'm
We're
okay
gonna-
with
we're
that
gonna-
is because of the fact that we raised it 2 years in a row. We
That's
went
right.
To the extreme,
Yep,
and the people need a break.
Yep.
A little break.
yeah, and we as a district righted our financial ship. We're eligible to do that based on where we are financial. If we were where we were at this point a year and a half ago, it would be a really big struggle to say we could live, unless we were to do some, dramatic furloughs and other expenditure stuff, and program things, to be cut. But, fortunately, it's unfortunate that our enrollment's going down. If our enrollment was going up dramatically at this time, where districts that do have that scenario happening, they're really struggling, because, if you have to put an additional bus on, you have to hire an additional teacher, and you're getting the same or less money, your only choice is to raise the taxation.
Last year, Dr. LeCoe painted a picture that the sky was falling, and here we are today, still here. I mean, he made it worse sounding than what you're sounding right now, so I'm not totally convinced that it's as bad as you're saying.
Oh, we're in way better shape than we've been in a number of years.
The sky was falling last year, and it wasn't the district.
Yeah,
It
well,
was the
the thing-
superintendent of school.
and we had some, you heard some of the things, we had, the highest collection rate we've ever had, from a real estate taxation standpoint. Now, that will cycle now, because the next 3 years of delinquents will go down because the current went up. You know, that if people pay their taxes currently, which is a good sign that maybe economics got a little bit better for some families, hopefully that's the reason.
I disagree.
But they did.
It's the 3-year glitch that
The
when you
banks
come up
were
with
gonna pay
taxes.
the back taxes on the properties anyway, so to say that we have 100% tax participation,
But the current tax rate, collection rate went up, not the
which
delinquents.
is,
Which is what people pay on their current bill only.
right.
The total overall, the delinquent tax number didn't go up, it was the current rate went up. People currently, now, those people who, if you're 3 years delinquent on your taxes,
Mhm.
your mortgage company or your bank or whatever, or the foreclosure process makes you pay. What went up this year was the ability of the existing people who got a bill August 1st of 2014 to pay their taxes before December 31st of 2014. That percentage went up.
And how many of those are actual mortgages?
I don't, those are all,
Well,
that's
if they're
all.
escrowed into the mortgage,
They're still,
if it's escrowed into the mortgage, they have no choice but to pay it.
right,
You understand?
but there's a lot,
Right,
So
so,
they're still paying.
But that would have been the same.
Because
as
if
the
they
previous
could
Right,
year.
they
pay
have
their
no
taxes,
choice.
they wouldn't pay their mortgage.
but that would have been,
They have
that
no
would have
choice.
been
They do.
relatively the same as.
they don't have a choice.
Pay
It
your
comes right out,
mortgage.
it comes right out of their,
Absolutely, but the people who aren't paying their mortgage aren't paying their taxes.
he's not talking about those. He's talking about the ones
But
that actually.
there's a way to track, people who pay their mortgages, you know, on an ongoing basis, it didn't change real dramatically because the real estate market, you know, buying and selling didn't change real dramatically between 2012 and 2014.
Mhm.
So there, if half of the people have their taxes escrowed into their mortgage, you know, that same half had it the year before. The thing that happened is people paid, incomes went up. Well, I showed you that at the last meeting. Incomes went up.
I
and people-
disagree with that
and-
too.
well,
Yeah, it's an average, but let's look at it this way. Yeah, it does look like the incomes have went up. But if Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates moved into the area today, everybody's gonna look like we're millionaires according to those numbers.
Mhm.
That's the problem with that average. It doesn't really give a good indication of how that income is distributed throughout the district among the people who are living here.
Oh, I won't disagree with you. There are certain people.
People are hurting, so to say that
No,
incomes are.
but the income level of the school district, which is filed on, when you file your state tax return, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a school district code, what school district do you live in? And we surpassed, the highest income level ever was 2007, which, if you think about it, that was the year that no matter what, you doubled your money in real estate. If you worked in the construction industry, you were busier than you've ever been, and you made more money than you ever made. And then it fell off dramatically. It fell off all the way to 2011. So we went 3.5 to 4 years of total people who lived in our school district, who filed taxes with the state of Pennsylvania, went down. And then it went back up, and it went back up, and in 2014, it surpassed 2007.
Yeah, and again, if it's a small majority of people who are making a larger amount of money, that will make the overall look good. I'm talking about the people who aren't doing so well.
All I can say is, and I'm not gonna disagree with you, because we don't have access to individualized data.
Right.
But on a whole, the population base didn't change. On a whole, the population base didn't change, and the incomes have gone higher than they were in 2007. Now, I don't know of Zuckerberg or anybody else who came into and moved into the district that's gonna show an extra $100 million of income. I don't know of anybody that did that. But what I do know is, sure, there are people who are still struggling, or maybe even making less than they did in prior years. But overall, our collection rate went up on the current status, and the income surpassed where it has been ever. So those two things, in general terms, I'm not gonna disagree with you, because we don't have specific data on each individual family. But in general terms, people paid their taxes, and people had more money, in general terms. So, you know, those good things contributed to us having more revenue. And then Plain Commons, which was the money that we were entitled to all along, that we weren't getting, they funded it. That was a big number. That was $1.2 million. And then we cut $800,000 worth of expenses out on the operating side of our budget, not knowing where we were gonna be getting these two, $1.9 million of extra revenue that we ended up getting. So the good news is we're better off than we expected to be. The bad news is we still don't know what the state's gonna do, and it's still, roughly 12% of our operating budget. Is it more than that now? Well, I'm sorry, it's 12 million. It's the total amount of our state and federal money. We really don't know what it's gonna be yet, and that's 12
That's
to
like
14.
30-some%.
Yeah, 32%. We're at $12 to $14 million, and there's a big difference between 12 and 14 when you're dealing with a fund balance of $4 million. So the good news is the sky is, we're not imploding. Our test scores still went up, and our financial condition got better. The bad news is we still don't know where we're going to get. What our funding source and formula and dollar amount is going to be, which was relatively 30 to 33% of our budget, which makes it really difficult to budget for next year when we don't even know what we're getting this year. And like we said, we had high tax situations over the last couple of years to try to right the financial ship, and you bit that bullet, and we're there. So we're going to do everything that we can possibly do, including telling the state that we're going to live within the index. And we might, if I don't see it happening, but if there was an extra $1 million in state revenue coming to us, you could go less than the index. I don't think that's going to happen, but we have to at least tell them, are we anticipating going higher than the index? And the answer is no.
Even with the exception?
Even with the exception. Because we've put ourselves in a financial position to be able to afford to not have to do that.
What's the exception that comes out this year?
The retirement, 16, 17 is the last year for retirement. But if we do the resolution that we're talking about to stay within the index, we wouldn't be eligible for that
Yes.
exception. Yeah.
I'm just,
And don't forget that.
that exception runs out, and we're still looking at significant increase in pension contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're looking at significantly higher annual $1 million budgets with a school district that has less and less children. So the sky in some people's lives are falling, because they want to understand how school district's budget continues to increase when enrollment continues to decrease.
Well, the budget went down for 2 of the last 3 years.
It did not, it went up.
Oh, our expenditure, the budget went up, but the
Yeah.
expenditures went down. That's how we're
good. I mean, that's-
we're spending.
that should happen.
Yeah, we're
That should
spending,
happen.
it should. There are other school districts, all of them around us are declining in enrollment, and not a single one of them had their expenditures go down. And I applaud you for what you had to do to put it in that position. Again, that wasn't me, that was you and the staff and administration. But, we're spending less now than we did in 2012-13. And the primary reason to be able to do that was enrollment going down, not having to replace existing positions.
Usually when
And
we do the comparison, we are the smallest of the litmus test out of, the 5 regional school districts.
Right.
So
Correct.
if anyone's going to have to do it as a necessity,